everyone, how you doing? Hope you're keeping well. Not long to Christmas now. hold on. Yeah, it's true, probably. Don't let the winter get you down. We'll be out the other side before you know it. Yeah, keep saying that. Keep on with the hot drinks. Keep on with the hot water bottles. Keep on with the positive, sunny thoughts. Sorry for the silence over the last few weeks. I've been really busy. Not just skating, although I have been skating. I've been really busy over the last couple of weeks. I've been fulfilling the Giants Kickstarter, or rather I should say Curtis at Ramshackle has been fulfilling the Giants Kickstarter. I've been merely packing and posting stuff, so thank you, Curtis, for that. Excellent casts, as always. They should be winging their way to you at the moment if you haven't already got them, so that's exciting. I have been retrieving lots of moulds from Macrocosm and spinning those up. So the Patreon Warband stuff, that's been cast and being painted for the box art at the moment, and that will be on its way very, very soon. I've got a bunch of new stuff, a bunch of very exciting stuff that I've cast up that I need to get painted. And then I haven't decided yet whether that's going on Kickstarter or just going into the shop. It's entirely possible it'll just go into the shop because that's a bit quicker. So do keep an eye out, but I'll let you know as and when that new stuff is around. And I've been recasting, or not recasting, I've been casting more of some new stuff for the shop, or some old stuff rather for the shop. So that, unpacking that. So that's on its way, and I've been finishing a few commissions. I've got one more to finish this coming week, and then I'll be up to speed with my current sculpting commissions, and I've been painting light goblins. So it's all been rather full on, but I have got time for a few videos, so that's cool. The first thing that I think we should do is take a look at this month's White Dwarfs, as we haven't, or it feels like we haven't taken a look at White Dwarf for a little while. I think I did that quite early on in October. I'm going to do that quite early on in November. So without further ado, let's take a look at this month's White Dwarfs from 1985 and 1990. Here we go. Alrighty then, my apologies as always for not having a very clean work surface. Lots of little bits of lead shavings and bits of sprue and stuff from packing castings. There we go, clear it out of the way a little bit. Here are this month's White Dwarfs. So let us start off in 1985 with November 1985 issue 71. And the cover image here is the cover of Dragon Warriors, which is an RPG that I've not heard much about, but apparently it's quite a big one, or was quite a big one. And that's going to be featured in one of the scenarios in this White Dwarf. There are several scenarios in this White Dwarf. It's quite scenario heavy, this one. People have obviously had some time to think a little bit about the issues. So let's crack on forwards. Open box here is discussing Avenger and Assassin, the two Way of the Tiger books. A little while ago, like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, I had some do-it-yourself fantasy adventure books, and I remember really liking them because they were a bit more sort of diplomacy and intrigue rather than just fighting. And there was one that I could never complete. It kept going in a loop at one point, and I think one of the numbers was printed wrong or something because I couldn't ever get out of that cycle. And I've hunted since for them, and I couldn't find. And then I looked through this copy of White Dwarf, and this tiger logo up here and the Way of the Tiger, just that seems very familiar. So I wonder if it was one of these books, but it wasn't. It definitely wasn't one of these two. Were there any more of these? I don't know, maybe I could have a look, but yeah, maybe if anything rings a bell, if you know of any game book series that are fantasy game books that they're a bit sort of higher level, the sort of diplomat. No, I don't mean that in a negative way about fighting books. I just mean that rather than being one person on the ground fighting, they were a bit more sort of state level, governmental level books. Anyway, if that rings any kind of bell, maybe drop me a shout. And a very interesting introduction to this paranoia, vapors don't shoot back scenario, written in a kind of appropriately paranoia style. Do you like a bit of paranoia? And a very lengthy review, a fittingly lengthy review here. If I can turn that page back, which I can't. Yes, this is quite a long old review, but fittingly long because it's reviewing Mask of Nyarlathotep, if that's Nyarlathotep? Nyarlathotep, you know how to pronounce that. The Call of Cthulhu box, which is an absolutely classic linked Call of Cthulhu campaign. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Here we have a discussion on alignment in D&D. I'm going to say it's fairly obvious, but maybe it's a useful discussion if people haven't really thought about what alignment actually means, or what actually character playing means. Here are a couple of mermaidy characters, one female, one male, for aquatic adventures. We've been covering a bit of those recently. Here's a standalone page of Thrud the Barbarian. Thrud gets his passport photo taken. Here's an interesting, it claims to be a translation of a text from a historian on a particular cult, the cult of the Assassins, and it brings in a little bit of the Crusades and the Knights Templar and Islamic sects, and it's quite fun because a lot of this is actually true. A lot of the history that's covered here is actual history, but they've sort of pulled little bits together and strands together and indicated other things going on behind the surface. It's quite fun read. Here's the first of, as I said, several scenarios, a box of old bones. This is a Dragon Warriors and AD&D adventure. Group of characters stumble upon or stay at this monastery, which is actually in the middle of a bit of inter-monastery intrigue in itself. There's some scheme going on to deprive this monastery of its holy relics that the characters are thrust into the middle of. I'm not sure how it would play, first of all, because it's very much set in... it's not strictly historical, I guess, because it has magical elements to it, but obviously it's a Christian monastery from the way that it's discussed, so how well that fits into the creeds and faiths of fantasy worlds, I don't know. I can see it running quite nicely as a Warhammer Fantasy roleplay, but you'd have to sort of reset what the cult was. But the background to the actually functioning of the monastery is more interesting than the scenario itself. I feel like the scenario itself would very much play down to one encounter in the crypt of the monastery after a lot of railroading your players through a series of events. But interesting, nevertheless, as I say, quite a good look at the way that a monastery might function. Here are the travellers on another adventure. Excellent. We won't dwell too much on that. Some letter pages, which I will confess I have not read a great deal of, although I noticed that Dave Morris here is writing a letter in. Is that the same Dave Morris, by any chance, as who wrote... no, it's not. Ignore me, I'm talking rubbish. I thought I had seen a Dave Morris previously, but it does not appear so. Here's the second scenario, quite a different one this time. This is a traveller encounter, but a sort of sci-fi heist. Cool, I love a good heist scenario. I love a good heist film. I love good heist, haha. Yes, trying to rob a starport, and would be fun to run, I think. Yeah, would like to run this one. Not maybe with Traveller, I've never got my head around Traveller, but quite nicely detailed and leaves very much the players up to how they want to approach everything, gives you all the information you need to deal with whatever method of theft that they decided was appropriate, but very much leaves it up to them to come up with exactly how they're going to do what they're going to do. Here's a discussion of why it's important for monsters not just to be objects to kill. And what I found quite interesting here was the discussion of coming across a new monster. The players are presented with a 12-spotted purple creature that vaguely resembles a cross between a, fill in the blanks here, and has a barely pronounceable name. The players now have to guess what it can do and how to kill it. Once they've made their choices, they can attack it and find out how wrong they were, and on the basis of this, guess and try again. The procedure is to be repeated until either the monster or the characters run out of hit points. Role-playing games are supposed to be at least partly games of skill, but in a situation such as this, it's very hard to find evidence of any skill actually being used or required. Interesting that this is, maybe I've just had bad experiences, but this is very much my impression of D&D 5th edition. That there's not really any role play and B, any skill other than, min-maxing your character to be the most effective in combat they possibly can be and then rolling a bunch of dice. There's certainly not a lot of role playing to it, and I like the approach of this article, although it should be fairly self-evident if you're playing a role-playing game that not only should your characters be playing roles, but your monsters should have a role as well. There should be a reason for them to exist and a reason for them to do the things they do. They don't just exist for your players to bulldoze through them. So I think it's a useful article, it's a good article, it's an important article. I could refer a few of my role-playing friends to it, but I also think if you're playing role-playing games, you should know that already. And here's a second article by the same person looking at what makes the build of a good monster, not necessarily a good alignment monster, but a rounded and believable monster, with an example of how to create one. Again, all fairly common sense guidelines that really should be second nature to anybody who's GMing, but don't appear to be necessarily. Right, excuse the shadows on here. This is some paints that I've got on my tabletop. Let's get them out of the way. On the subject of paints, here we are on Tabletop Heroes, and we're thinking ink in this case. I remember the first time I came across inks. I was using Winsor & Newton inks, but I was using them painting rather than painting miniatures, like flat 2D painting. But I certainly remember my first experience with the old, Citadel inks, learning to wash stuff and glaze stuff for the first time, and just how much of a difference it made. So great, and really nice to see these big and clear photos. In previous issues, it seemed like the photos are all quite small and quite distant and part of a scene like this, which is, is fine. It gives the atmosphere to the characters, but it's nice to see the sort of bigger and in detail pictures as well. Also really nice that most of these are Dixon miniatures, from a series that's been very reliant on Citadel stuff previously. It's nice to see some different manufacturers in there. Here's Gobbledygook. Gobbledygook comes across Wadney and his mighty steed Howald. Howald not lasting very long, becoming Goblin Dinner. This is a comic strip with 2 deaths in it. There you go. Go White Dwarf, be edgy with your cartoony fictional deaths. There's that advert for Dragon Warriors, the 3 books of. Some more adverts. And on the back cover, Marvel Superheroes Heroic Role-Playing Game. There we go. So there was our White Dwarf, November 1985. It was a nice read. So now we're going to look at White Dwarf 1990. As I've said previously, we're jumping now to a 5-year gap. Sorry, slurping my tea. I shouldn't put it there. I'll put it there. So that we can look at the White Dwarfs that I remember from having from when I was a kid in 1995. Anyway, here we go. On the cover, we have got, wrapping around the cover, in fact, just open it up so you get the full sense of the thing, Advanced Space Crusade. Excellent stuff, like Advanced Space Crusade, and we're going to be finding out a bit more about that, obviously, within the pages. Some stuff that's going on in all of the different shops around the country. This is cool. It's an overview of Games Day 1990. Here's that pretty awesome Horus and the Emperor drawing. It's really weird sort of looking at this close up, this at this size. I'm used to sort of seeing it as a little panel. I mean, I know chaos, right? But just what is going on with the War Master's anatomy here is like he's got no waist. He's really skinny, and then his head is chunky, and then he's got no shoulders, and his arms are sort of tucked away behind his legs. It's a weirdo pose, but there you go, weirdo pose. And here is the story as written by William King. Look at some glorious Fraser Gray images here, of Fraser Gray obviously being the absolute genius expert on enamel paints, who produced all the figures in the Goblinoids combat card deck, which you'll know that I have a particular fondness for, but just absolutely gloriously blended enamel painting here. Really lovely stuff. Here's some Space Marine stuff, how to build a cult of chaos. Chaos Horde of whatever alignment. Here's your force organization charts. And some counters. And then how to convert your Orc battle wagon. I have one actually, I could do this, but I think I want to carry on using it as a stage for my Goth Rockers. That's another project in the pipeline for a future year. Anyway, here with only a few bits of plastic cards, some extra slaughter bases, and a plastic straw, you can turn your regular Orc battle wagon into the Gob Smasher, as seen there. And here's your data card for running a Gob Smasher in the game. Here's another interesting, we've met this guy before, Inquisitor Cryptman. One of his aides recently got devoured by a Tyranid flesh borer, if you'll remember. I think that was in the last issue. In this issue, he is the target of this, well, presumably this chap here, although this chap here is quite a comedic. You might have seen the miniature that this drawing is presumably based on. The Grabber Slasher. It's a really weird sort of squig thing back when the squigs were identified with Tyranids. But anyway, the story is rather more horrific about the way that a Tyranid bio life form that is intended to take on forms of what it eats and use them to assassinate a particular target. It's pretty grotesque, but it's a good little storyline. And of course, Cryptman survives, but his aide comes to another sticky end. He's getting through servants really quickly these days. Here's a lovely modelling workshop. The first of several exciting ones, or actually not the first one, because last month we looked at the Warhammer Fantasy Cottage article, but development of the modelling workshop articles, building terrain for Warhammer. Dave Andrews, of course, being the legendary terrain maker that he is. So this also gives you the templates and step-by-step things, and these buildings, it's always really nice. In the cabinets at Foundry, they've got a bunch of these buildings. Not maybe this one, but certainly a bunch of this style ones from White Dwarf, this era. They're always really nice to see. They're in good nick. They've survived really well. Here's Advanced Space Crusade. There's what it looks like with its rather hideous neon cardboard intestine board. And the really cool plastic Tyranids and the not so cool scouts that went with it, and loads of really glorious, lovely artwork. And an advert for regular Space Crusade. And some more cool heavy metal stuff. This is kind of what I mean when I say about desaturated paint jobs. I mean, these colours could be really vibrant, but the pink is kind of quite pastely muted. The blue is, or I guess it's supposed to be white probably, but it's quite pastely muted. The bone is very muted. And how much of that is photography and how much of that is the colours on the actual miniature, I'm not entirely sure, because all of the stuff in the Foundry cabinet looks really, really bright. I think like this guy is probably in the Foundry cabinet and is really vivid and vibrant and bright, and yet looks a bit dull, I think, because of the print. So I think maybe a lot of it is because of the print quality, but it's an aesthetic that I still try really hard to achieve from time to time, that sort of knocked out look. And I think it's because I don't really use Q&A Warhammer. I don't really use white very much. Mighty Empires, look, yes, we'll skip through. Nice campaign system, dullest game that Games Workshop ever produced. Yeah, I think maybe it's because I don't use white and black as a highlight and a shade very often. I tend to go for a warmer highlight and a cooler shade colour. And maybe if I just used white and black, then that would knock the saturation way down. So maybe I should do that instead. Give it a try at least. And here is the second part of Confrontation. Still no rules. We're still only talking about the background of the world of Necromunda. Some cool John Blanche concept sketches for the various types of gangs, discussions of the various types of gangs, some of which made it through to Necromunda. So we've got clan warriors who are like the regular gangs that the eventual Necromunda box would come with, and then brat gangs who are kind of became spirers, but in this case they've got all these big punk hairdos and sort of neo-Renaissance style periwigs and tall heels. Of course, it's John Blanche, so big heels and flowing coats and things. Tech gangs, which became Vansar. Scavies became Scavies, nomads from the Ash Waste, Undercity and mutant gangs, and Psyker gangs. I think they did an actual Psyker gang, although it may have been in one of the Specialist Games magazines. And then we're into adverts, some Elder Exarchs, Greater Demons, Lesser Demons. There we go. So there we are. 2 more White Dwarfs for the archive, and next week we'll take a look at the one 5 years on. 5 years on. So we'll take a look at November 1995. Join you for that, and in the meantime, take care and have fun.